Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised.
Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania.
Where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story is our first UK story, and we are so lucky to have Tommy from Let's Get Freaky on. Tommy, tell us a little bit about your podcast.
Hey guys, well, I'm excited to be here. So I explore all avenues of the paranormal: ghosts, cryptids, UFOs. I have different guests on every week to tell us their experiences and their work with the paranormal and their thoughts on the paranormal. I'm fascinated by it. I've always been fascinated by the paranormal since I was a kid, and I've had experiences myself, so I know there's more to this world, and I just love it. I love talking to you guys and learning more about other people's experiences as well.
Yeah, something I love about your podcast is it really is so diverse in the topics that you cover. I feel like you are such an expert on all of the different cryptids and ghosts, etc.,
Oh
because you
well.
really cover it all.
Oh, thank you very much. I don't think I've ever been called an expert before, but I'll take that.
Yeah,
I will
so
take that.
So if you like our podcast, you'll definitely
I
like
love
his.
it.
Go check it out on anywhere you get podcasts. I listen on Spotify. Let's Get Freaky. Definitely give it a listen. And today you have brought us to our first international location. And I'm so excited. It is the Greensted Church. And
Yes.
how did you end up going to this location?
Well, it's a special place for my family. My nan that I never met, she passed before I was born. It was her favorite church. She wasn't massively religious, but she did go to this church and she felt a connection to this church. And she passed before my mum and dad got married, and they got married in that church because of that reason. Unfortunately, they're not together now, but at the time, it was a lovely thing that they got married there. And it's just always been a place that we've always visited and, shared memories. And it's such a cool place because I believe it's the oldest wooden church in
Mhm.
the world, and it's a special place. There's a special feeling there.
Wow, I can't believe that they do weddings there. That
Yeah,
is amazing.
That is
yeah.
I mean, yeah, looking into the history, it is not only the oldest wooden church, it's the oldest wooden building in all of Europe.
Oh
So
wow.
it is
really
insanely old. Yeah, it dates from 1998 is what the estimate is for it. And it's in Essex County for those unfamiliar. And additions were done in the 1500s and 1600s, but the original church itself really is that old, which it's amazing to me that a wooden structure is still standing.
Wait, did you mean
Yeah.
1098?
998.
Nine, oh, I'm sorry. I swore you said 19. I was like, wait a minute.
That's not too old.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's
yeah, it's younger than us, but it's the oldest wooden building now.
yeah, okay.
There
So
are
it
some
makes me immediately think, sorry, the like what is the upper limit for a wooden building to survive since it's a organic material that breaks down?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
like this is that's a really old building, over 900 years and going, right? No, that's
Yes.
yeah, well
There's
over.
seen a
Yeah,
lot of history, a lot of crazy
yeah.
weather, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Yeah. And it still looks
And
pretty good when you go there.
really.
that's what I was gonna say. The pictures of it, it looks like a church, you know? It's
Yeah.
not like a decrepit old building. It still
No.
looks really nice.
Yeah. I'm not sure if they must keep painting it and stuff, and
Oh,
I suppose they
yeah,
change things and all that sort of thing, but yeah, it's in good nick.
that's
Yeah.
awesome.
There
Yeah.
are some interesting parts of it being such an old church. On one side of the church, there's something called a leper's squint, which is actually a hole in the wall where people that were unable to attend church could go and be blessed by the priest still. Other theories are that this wasn't for people that couldn't attend church, but it was actually for the priests to be able to watch who was coming. Either
Hmm.
could be likely, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah, why wouldn't people be allowed to go into the church? What do you know? Did you see like look into that at all or
It would be people that were like had done egregious sins or something like that,
gotcha. Okay.
but we're still interested in a blessing, I guess. But the really cool part of it, the coolest part to me, not even that it's from 1990, is that at the entrance, there is the grave of a 20th century crusader there.
That's pretty cool.
Being from the US, it just blows my mind that you can actually see a crusader's grave. You can
Yeah,
just go drive and see it, you know?
that is cool.
So that's a bit of the history of it. And I'd love to hear about your haunting experience there.
Yeah, well, it's actually I would say probably my first ever paranormal experience happened at that
Okay.
church. And I was really young. I was 5 years old. So I didn't really understand what was going on at the time. I remember it. I remember it very clearly. And I remember my mum and dad talking about it for years after. And I had a conversation with mum recently about it because I knew I was having this conversation. But when I was 5 years old, we used to go to this church quite a lot and just walk around and nice days and just talk about it and stuff like that. And we went down there, the whole family went down there, my mum, my dad, my brother, and my granddad. And we was just walking around and I was 5 years old. So I'm not really understanding about the history and I'm not really understanding about, the fact that it was my nan's favorite church and stuff like that. But I just remember getting this feeling of like my nan was there. Now
Oh,
I'd never met my nan,
Hmm.
and I remember I started crying, and I was telling my mum and dad, and I was telling my granddad that Nanny's here. I was saying Nanny's here. She's walking with us right now, and I didn't. I probably at that age I wouldn't have even known really about ghosts and stuff like that. I don't think 5 years old, but it was just very strange. And my mum was like blown away that I was sort of coming out with this sort of stuff at such a young age. And I remember like I didn't see her, but I just remember having a feeling, and it sounds really weird, but just like a knowing that she was there. And at the time, obviously, I didn't know it was my nan's favorite place. I didn't understand that, and I didn't even know my nan. I didn't know her. So, and I was just saying like, Nanny's there, and they were just baffled by it because why is a 5 year old coming out with this? And that was my first sort of, I would say, my first sort of paranormal experience took place at that church.
Wow. Yeah, what a powerful first experience, too. Like a lot of people think they see a shadow figure or something, but to be so emotionally affected by it,
mm.
but also
Yeah,
like in a positive way too. Like
yeah,
bonus
yeah,
points for that because that's
yeah, yeah.
other would have
It's a cool experience, and I didn't really understand it obviously at the time, being 5 years old. I didn't. It wasn't until I got older, and I still remember it. I still have that memory of walking around the church and saying, just saying, "Nanny's here," like just
Mhm.
as a 5 year old, and it's very strange. It's strange, but as you say, it's a cool paranormal experience.
Yeah, and they always say that children are more in tune with the paranormal because they tend to be less afraid. So that's really cool. And, it must have made you feel good as a kid. It's like she's manifesting to you, interacting with you, uh,
Yeah,
letting you know that she's there.
yeah, she
yeah,
wanted to meet you. Come by, say
yeah.
hi, right?
Yeah, 100%. I remember I got emotional as a 5 year old as well. I started
Yeah.
crying and stuff. I remember and being like really upset. But sort of like it's weird because it was sort of like a happy sort of feeling. But
Mhm.
I didn't know my nan. I didn't know anything about her. I'd seen pictures and stuff, and as I got older, I was told more stuff about her and stuff like that. But yeah, it was a weird one.
That's really cool. And did your parents have any feeling she was there?
I don't think they did. I mean, obviously they that's one of the reasons why we used to go there so much was because
Mhm.
obviously they got married there. But it was like a reminder of her. It was her
Mhm.
sort of happy place. So it's where she used to like to go a lot and, just, it was her happy place. So we used to go there and sort of, they used to go there and sort of remember her. And my granddad used to, who was her husband, used to go there as well. And it was just a nice place for us to go to.
Yeah, and have you heard, since this church is important in your family, have you heard of anyone else experiencing any other paranormal activity there? Because when I looked up hauntings there, there are quite a few.
Really?
Really?
That's interesting.
Like a
Yeah,
super old building like that with lots of
Yeah.
people going through.
Yeah,
That
there's definitely
yeah.
some, yeah,
Someone's still there.
there's no doubt. Yeah, for sure. Yeah,
yeah.
that's cool. I don't know anyone personally that's had any other paranormal experiences there, but I'd love to hear some.
Yeah,
Yeah,
right.
there's actually there pretty much all distinct spirits, which seems like it's kind of similar to the way that your Nan was manifesting there. Maybe it's people that just really enjoyed being at the church. It sounds like a peaceful place. It looks like it's in a beautiful setting.
Yeah,
So, not a bad place to spend your afterlife. One of the spirits that haunts the church is a man dressed in black clothing, and he can be seen standing next to the church organ. So people think that he was likely an organ player or even a priest that was there and just refuses to leave.
that's cool. Can I just say as well, my nan's not, she wasn't buried there. She was buried in
Mhm.
London. So she wasn't, her body wasn't laid to rest there. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah, but even so, because some of these other hauntings, they people have looked into, people that are buried there, and it said there was a small cemetery, but not very big. And so yeah, that makes me wonder if the spirits are just actively choosing to travel to the location because
yeah,
it's so
yeah,
peaceful.
yeah, yeah, for sure.
And there are quite a few other. I'll run through them quickly. One is a milkmaid who is seen crawling near the pulpit. Interesting. There are two other ghostly figures regularly seen sitting in the pews, which again makes me think people just loved it there and wanted to go. And then finally, a woman dressed in black who walks back and forth up and down the church holding a black bound Bible. And people often can see her walking even up the path to the church.
Oh,
Wow.
that's cool. It's also interesting. A black bound Bible. I don't know if there's any significant meaning. I mean, when I hear a woman dressed in black, I think of a mourner,
Mhm.
like a widow,
Yes.
unfortunately. But that's a very interesting piece that I don't know, it stands out to me as a black bound Bible, as something like that really stood out to people.
Yeah, for
Well,
sure.
depending on the era, too, black clothing wasn't abnormal. It's not like they were going to wear something this color until Victorian ages, really.
Sure, sure, that does make sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and also I'm no expert when it comes to Bibles and the material that they were bound in. So, it could be all sorts of colors that I don't know. I just always think of, a brown leather bound or
Yeah,
like
yeah.
red or,
Mhm. Sure. So that's Greensted Church, but I'm very interested, and I know you and I talked about it a bit on the episode we did for your podcast, but in how your journey with the paranormal progressed from this. So you went to this church. We know it's an old church. It's very paranormally active. You have this experience with your nan, and then what happens next in your paranormal journey?
So that was obviously quite a nice experience. I mean, even though I did cry at the time because I was little and I didn't really understand what was going on, as I got a little bit older, I was one of those kids that was always scared of the dark. And I still am scared of the dark, to be honest. I'm not going to lie. So if I'm staying in a hotel or whatever, I've got the telly on because I'm still scared of the dark now. But I was always one of those kids that felt like something was in my room. I always used to make my mum and dad up at night and try and get in their bed. And we actually lived in a haunted house for some time, my family.
oh,
And it was like the classic haunted house stuff. Things would go missing. You would hear noises, sometimes a bad vibe. You always felt like something was watching you. But there was one particular night when I was 10 years old, and me and my brother shared a room, and we had bunk beds, and I was on the top bunk. And you could see in the room because the street lights used to come in, so it sort of lit the room up. It was never like pitch black because me and my brother both didn't really like being in the complete dark. So I remember waking up one night and sort of looking down at my desk in our bedroom, and there was a man sitting there at the desk like this, sort of looking up in my direction, not moving, full-bodied. And to me, he looked like William Shakespeare. That's how he looked. I'm not saying it was William Shakespeare, but that's how I explain him because that's how, he had the long hair, he had a little beard, he had like this brown suit on, he had these boots on. He just looked like he was from that era. And I
sure.
was terrified, absolutely terrified. I always woke up and got scared during the night, but to wake up and see something was another level of fear. And I've called my mum in. She's come in the room and I'm going mad. I was like, Mum, there's a man in the room. There's a man in the room. And she couldn't see him, but he was still there. And she was trying to calm me down. And I was like, just going crazy because I was terrified. And I think because I was 10 years old and my mum and dad had had enough of me doing this, getting up during the night and trying to get in their bed, my mum was like, got a bit angry at me and was like, no, you're staying in the room. You're not coming out of this room. You're staying there. And we had a bit of an argument. It took a while, but I stayed in the room under the covers, sweating all night. And I kept looking every now and again, and he was still there, this man, all night, like as far as I remember. And then I woke up in the morning and, he was gone. And I never saw that man again. But that was a terrifying experience as a kid.
Yeah,
It's
that's a
strange.
very 180 from your first experience.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. But from that moment on, like I was old enough to sort of understand things a bit more. I used to watch ghost programs and stuff like that, which I shouldn't have probably been watching at 10, but I still knew what ghosts were and stuff like that then, obviously. So once I saw that, that sort of changed everything for me. Like from that moment, I know that there's more to this world. Even, I had that experience with my nan when I was really little and stuff, but didn't really understand what was going on then. But seeing that as a 10-year-old just changed everything.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah,
interesting to me that he would sit there and not move. I feel like we
Yeah,
normally hear of figures moving or trying to get our attention, but it's almost like maybe it was another ancestor or something just observing you. That must have been
yeah,
very unnerving. I
yeah.
guess would you have felt better if he had been moving versus stationary?
I don't know, to be honest. I don't know. I feel like that probably would have scared me even more if he was moving. He literally didn't, I can't even remember him blinking. He was like just still, just looking up. I don't even know if he was looking right at me, but he was sort of looking in my direction. And I remember my mum going up to him. And I don't know if she's gone through him, I don't know. But she went up to my desk and was sort of looking around and he didn't move, which is crazy. I didn't get out of the bed. My brother didn't wake up, which is weird as well. But yeah, I mean, from that moment, it changed everything. I did see other stuff in that house as well. I never saw that man again. That was a one-off thing. But I was I was terrified after that. I spoke to him. I talked to my mum recently about it. She always says how bad she feels. She
Oh,
she listens to the podcast, and I always talk about seeing this ghost, and she's always like, "I feel so bad that I made you stay in the room." But I'm like, "It's all right," because it's it set me off on this journey, I guess. Um,
yeah.
yeah, but I remember being in their room as well one night, and they had mirrors in their room, my mum and dad's room, and I was playing around in front of the mirrors, being silly, whatever I was doing, and a full-bodied naked lady walked past me and walked into their bathroom, and I remember she was a blonde naked lady, and my mum was blonde. It wasn't unusual for my mum to walk around naked, so I just thought it's my mum, so I just mum and just started talking to her, walked to the bathroom talking to her. As I've got into the bathroom, there was no one there. And I just remember being like, oh my gosh, I've just seen what I thought was my mum walk past me. And I've ran downstairs. I've got, Mum, did you just walk? Obviously she didn't. She was fully clothed. And yeah, so that was another time that I saw a full bodied apparition in that house.
That
wow.
story has stuck with me, that specific one, so much since we recorded your episode. There's something about bathrooms to me that are just so eerie to begin with. I can't
Yeah.
imagine, like,
Yeah.
did you actually go into, like, follow the apparition into the bathroom?
Yeah. So it walked past me, went into the bathroom, and I just started talking to her.
Hmm.
Mum, da 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 da, whatever I was saying, walked into the bathroom and there was no one there.
Hmm.
And I was like, I just couldn't get my head around it. It wasn't her there. And I've just run downstairs and obviously she was there. But yeah, that was weird. That was weird.
Yeah, very
Yeah.
unsettling. And again, I guess it's a question of like, what would you prefer? It's probably worse to think you're following your mom, get to the bathroom, and then
Yeah.
see a figure that's not your mom
Yeah.
standing there.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
remember that wasn't as like scary as like it was scary. It was weird, obviously, like to walk in and but I just remember being more shocked by it. Just like that
Mhm,
there's no one in the bathroom and I've just seen someone walk past.
mhm. Yeah, and you mentioned that your whole family knew the house was haunted. Did they have experiences with full-bodied apparitions as well?
No one else, as far as I know, saw a full bodied apparition. None of them have told me. They all say they haven't. But my brother did see, in our room where I saw the man, two red eyes. He woke up one night and there was two red eyes just floating towards him. and that terrified him. My brother's a lot
Yeah.
more skeptical than me now. Like he's had experiences, my brother, but he's still like, yeah, but I could have been, uh, having a bad dream. Like he still tries to, which is fine. I think you should be skeptical. But yeah, so he saw that. He saw red eyes floating towards him, which I think is pretty scary.
Yeah. Yeah. I definitely understand the skeptical is I am maybe the hardest skeptic of our group. And that's not to say the paranormal doesn't happen, but I do feel more often than not, it can be explained by some natural phenomenon. But that being said, though, what happens when we do hit the okay, so David, what explains this? I got nothing. Like yeah, like this is pretty cool, man.
Yeah,
Like this is
yeah.
awesome.
I think it's good to be skeptical because I admit I'm the worst at like, no, that's paranormal. Everything's paranormal. And I should be a little bit more skeptical when things happen, but sometimes things happen that you
Yeah.
just can't, I feel like I'd be seeing ghosts all the time if it was something that was in me. I mean, I have had other experiences, but yeah, I don't know. It's weird.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
tend to fall into I mean, I'm skeptical at times, but I think I just am so fascinated by the paranormal that it's hopeful. I want it to be
Yeah,
the paranormal. I'll catch something on
yeah, that's
camera and
me.
I'm like, oh my gosh, it
could
must
this be
be.
it?
Or
Yeah.
Yeah.
someone tells me something about their house and I'm like, your house must be haunted. So,
Yeah.
speaking of haunted houses, since that house, have you lived in other haunted houses?
I've had other experiences in other houses. The weird thing is when we left that house, I remember we never talked about it being haunted when me and my brother was quite young anyway, so it wasn't something that we would talk about. But when we left that house, I was 12. And I remember us all like my dad saying, "God, I'm glad we got out of there. Something weird about that house." My dad definitely felt it strongly. And I remember the first night in our new house that we moved into, I had my own room. And as I said, I was always scared of the dark. But I remember on the first night in that room, sort of laying in bed, and it was quite like a new big room, which is weird anyway when you're a kid. But I remember having the lights off and just not being like super scared. And I remember laying there just feeling like on the first night in a new house, feeling like, oh, why am I not scared? And I thought that was
Hmm.
recently thinking about that. That's quite weird that I sort of felt a bit of comfort in a new house. Things did happen eventually in that house that I saw, but it wasn't the same nasty sort of vibe that we used to sometimes get in the previous house.
Hmm.
Yeah. Was it more of just like just a presence? Something's there with you, but like, you can
Yeah,
tell no bad intention. It's like, hey, I'm
yeah,
here.
yeah. I saw a shadow figure in that house. This is jumping forward a little bit because I was 21 when this happened, and me and my brother went back upstairs. We shared a room again. We missed each other. Went back to our room upstairs, and we had sort of our own little flat upstairs. We had a loft conversion upstairs, and that's where me and my brother was. And I was at university at the time, but I used to go to uni in London, so I was really close to London, so I used to come back every weekend and stay at home. And I remember it was a Friday night. I was laying in bed, just got back from uni, and I woke up, and there was a figure of a man just standing over my bed, just like the typical blacker than the room, and it was just, obviously terrifying to wake up and see that. I just thought it was my brother, just for whatever reason mucking about. So I tried to punch my brother, and I was sort of gone through him, and it's disappeared. And I've obviously made a bit of a noise when I've done this because my brother on the other side of the room woke up, turned the light on, and was like, "Bruv, what's the matter? What's going on?" And I was like, "I thought you were standing over me." And at the time when that happened, I didn't put it I didn't think of it as a paranormal. I was like, okay, I'm tired. I've been drinking at university all week. I'm probably a bit stressed. And I just put it down to that. I didn't really know a lot about shadow figures and stuff like that at that time. And it was only recently, like a little bit further on, that I sort of started learning about shadow figures. I was like, I've had that experience. I've had that experience where I've seen the outline, it's blacker than the room. And I've had that experience since in this house that I'm in now.
See, you said you feel like if it was something innate in you, you would see them everywhere, but it sounds like you are very, I mean, I don't want to label you as like a medium or
Yeah.
whatever, but it sounds like you are very, very in touch with
I've been
the
told that.
paranormal.
Yeah, it's weird because I don't think of myself as having quite a lot of experience, but I have had quite a lot of experiences. Um, I've been told that I could open myself up more. The thing is, I love the paranormal. It fascinates me. I love the experiences that I've had. I wouldn't change any of it, but it does still scare me at the same time. I
Mhm.
still wouldn't want to invite anything in my house. I
No.
don't think you should play with certain things. Like I would never do a Ouija board. There's nothing wrong with it. People doing it, it's fine. But just personally, I don't like playing with stuff like that. And yeah, so it's something I feel like I could open myself up more if I wanted to, but
Mhm.
I'm too scared.
I mean, it can be scary because, when people have investigations and they identify, ghosts and such, but sometimes you get like a name and that's who they say they are. But the other, spirits that might be in a place, we don't
Yeah,
we don't know who they are, what their intentions are.
yeah,
And I don't know, that's the part that kind of gets me. Is like if you knew exactly who you were dealing with, that sounds a lot more, you know, appealing. But when it's like
yeah,
a opening up the Pandora's box and you get what you get, that can
yeah,
be
Mhm.
unsettling.
yeah.
I
And,
totally get that.
and I think this stuff can be dangerous as well. Like you've
Yeah.
got to be, I would say, a bit careful with it. So that's why I wouldn't invite anything. Even though I've had things happen in this house, I wouldn't want it to be something that happens all the time.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. I am so strict about the Ouija board rule that I will not buy Halloween decoration with Ouija on it. Nothing. I don't want it in my house. People know they are not to bring anything like that to my home because, like you're saying, you don't know what you're going to get, and it can be dangerous if you don't know. I'll leave it to the experts, people that know
Yeah,
much more. There's generations of mediums and stuff that know much more than I.
It would definitely be like a child playing with a very adult thing for me, like a power tool that I'm just like, yep, I pull the trigger and it does something.
Mhm.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. When I first started the podcast, I've had quite a few paranormal experiences, but I felt like in that first few months, first 6 months, I felt like I was having a lot of activity going on. Now I don't know if that's because I was suddenly talking about it every day, and I'm sort of inviting it in that way, which I think is possible.
Mhm.
I was seeing shadow figures. I saw a cat in my house that wasn't there, which was really weird.
that's
Um,
cool.
yeah, yeah. So we was all sitting down at dinner. This was it was in the evening as well, so it was light. And we was all eating dinner, all the family, and I jumped out my skin because a black cat ran past me. And I was like, oh, there's a cat in the house. So I've gone around the house, I'm looking for a cat, and I couldn't find any cats. All the windows were shut. So I don't know what that was, but that was I jumped out my skin. My
Oh
wife
my
was like, "You
God.
okay?" I was like, "No, I've just seen a cat."
I was gonna say, is it common where you live for cats to wander into your home? Because if that happened to us,
No.
well, yeah.
We have a new cat.
Yeah, we don't have a cat. We've got a dog now. We didn't have a dog at the time. Um, but yeah, it wasn't there is cats on this street, but there was definitely not a cat in the house.
Yeah.
So that was weird.
Yeah.
That I do hear what you're saying about the uptick in activity though, and that's an interesting topic that you mentioned. It makes me want to ask other people that have paranormal podcasts because I've certainly noticed an uptick since we started recording and since we're talking about it all the time. And perhaps it is that we're all just much more open to it, more aware of it, or we are inviting it in because we're something to, hold on to. I think it's really interesting. It makes me want to ask other people. Have you asked other guests that you've had?
Yeah, I think I have, especially at the time when I was experiencing it. I don't know if I feel like I've turned it off a little bit myself because there was getting a point where I remember I come in on a Monday night from work and I wasn't recording that night, and I was watching an NFL game on a Monday night, and I heard someone walk down the stairs, and I looked to my left, like just expecting to see my wife or one of the kids coming down the stairs because I literally heard the steps, and I was like, and there was no one there. And I was just, and it was weird because I didn't even get scared. I went, not today. I'm watching the football, and,
Yeah.
and I felt like I was getting used to it. Like, and after it sort of that worried me a little bit.
I wonder. if you're seeing like an uptick at your house, is because you're talking about it more, and they're like, yeah, we do exist, we're here.
Yeah, for sure. The more you're open to it as well, I think plays a part. Once you have an experience and you see something and you know there's more, I think that increases the chance of seeing more stuff because you
Hmm.
know the possibilities are endless really when it comes to the paranormal.
Have your kids had any experiences in your house with it?
And they get very scared in their bedroom, and
Oh
often
no.
because I was yeah, and I don't like that because I know how that feels. So I've got a 12-year-old now, a 7-year-old, and a 4-year-old. Glad I got that right. And yeah, they're in a room just there actually next door, and quite often they'll wake up during the night, and especially my middle daughter at the moment, gets very scared in her room, and I feel I often go, come on, come into our room and you can sleep on the floor and get the
Hmm.
sleeping bags out and stuff. So yeah, they definitely get feelings and stuff, which worries me a little bit because you don't want your kids being scared, especially when you know how it feels.
Sure. Yeah, but at least you aren't making them stay in their room
Yeah,
like you had to.
yeah.
Yeah.
But something weird happened not too long ago. It was a little while ago, but I woke up. They woke me up during the night because they were scared, and I was like, "I'll come and sleep on the floor in your room. Like you stay in there, and I'll sleep on the floor." And I was just sort of laying there, and I was like waiting for them to go to sleep, and then I'll sneak out. And I was just laying there, and this is going to sound really weird, but I was sort of looking into the hallway, and I was like, "Come on, let's see something. Let's see something." And I don't know if so. This could be you manifesting or whatever, but I did see like, a shape of a face appear and start coming towards the bedroom. And again, I wasn't like really scared. I wasn't
Hmm.
like I felt like I was inviting it, that freaked me out. And I was like, nope, let's stop this. Again, I don't know if that's a manifesting. I don't know, but it was weird.
Hmm.
So your bluff was called.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, all right, let's see it.
yeah.
Yeah, all right, you want to
I,
see me?
I,
Here I am. You're like, okay, whoa, whoa, no, 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 no,
no,
no, no,
that's it.
no.
That'll do.
It was a prank. It was a prank. No.
Yeah,
Hmm. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, I always think it's interesting. Do you think that it is, do you think there's a family linkage to being more aware to this stuff, or do you think, I guess it's nature versus nurture, or do you think it's both?
I think my family, both sides of my family, my dad's side and my mum's side, they're all very interested in the paranormal. Like we do talk about it quite a lot. I know my dad has seen a ghost. He's had weird experiences. My mum's had weird experiences as well. And I know that because before the podcast, I didn't know too much about the family's history of the paranormal, but especially on my mum's side, I found out very recently there's a lot of people that are really into the paranormal and would consider themselves psychics, stuff like which I didn't know until doing the podcast. And I found that interesting.
Mhm.
I've got an aunt that has a lot of experiences.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy that like once we started doing our podcast as well, like the floodgates open, people were like, "Oh my gosh, so you're into this? Let me talk to you all about this and all
Yeah,
my experiences." And it's like, "Oh yeah, cool. Yeah, let's absolutely. This is exciting."
100%. And most people have got an experience. Even
Mhm.
people that will say they don't believe it or whatever. Like I've got friends that go, "Nah, I'm not sure about the paranormal." But I did see a girl sitting on the end of my bed one night when I woke up, and I was like, "Man,
Yeah. And
is that
what do you think
wow?
that
Yeah,
is?
what's
If
that
not,
then, man?"
yeah,
So most
exactly.
people have had an experience.
Yeah, and I'm curious also the difference in the cultures between, the two countries. What is your country's general sentiment about it? Because here I feel like it's divided into the people that are like paranormal believers or quack and the people that are really into it. So is it any
Yeah,
different there?
I think it's the same. I think it's the same here, to be honest. But again, most people you talk to, I would say 9 times out of 10. I feel like it's more than that. Like most people are either interested in it or had experiences. So even people that don't like talking about it, I've got like family members that sort of don't like talking about it. They think and that's fine because you could invite stuff in talking about it and stuff. But yeah, I think we're pretty much the same when it comes to the paranormal.
Yeah, although I mean, granted that the United States has a lot of really cool paranormal locations, I just like UK's been around just a little longer, not too long.
Yeah.
little bit.
So yeah, just a little. But so like the paranormal sites and like the also just like the history, like the rich history of those sites are like really compelling to me.
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'd love to go visit them.
Come over, man. Come over.
I
You guys
know.
welcome over. I've got a castle just down the road, Corfe Castle, which I think was built, I think it was the 12th century. I've probably got that wrong, by William the Conqueror. So I might
Oh,
have got that wrong,
cool.
but it's a cool castle. I'm sure there's a lot of, well, it's obviously seen a lot of history.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's just insane to me thinking of that church when they said there's a 12th century crusader buried there. It really is just unfathomable to me that your parents got married in a church where a 12th century crusader is buried. It's
Yeah,
incredible.
that
I
is
mean, how
pretty
could it
cool.
not be haunted?
Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just think when places like that, can you imagine what that has seen? Like
Hmm.
the good and the bad. It must have had some terrible events there and some amazing events. That energy that it must hold is unreal. And sometimes you can feel that when you go to places that are old, and I feel like you can feel the energy and you can
Hmm.
feel the history, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I was actually surprised that there was only those few distinct people there at the church, and there wasn't really very many general hauntings because when you think of it, you know, it's an insane amount of time for people to have been there. Over 1,000 years of history, you're right. The things it must have seen, you know, yeah, it's incredible. Is there any final story that you would like to tell?
Wow. I mean, I've had more paranormal experiences. Um, I've seen UFOs and stuff like that. I don't know if you want to get into that, but uh,
Sure.
yeah, I'll
Yeah,
tell you a
sure.
couple
Like
of.
a UFO cryptid, you cover so many things in your podcast. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, I've seen. I'll tell you two pretty cool UFO experiences. So the first was when I was 14 years old, and me and my brother and a few mates were playing football in the street, and we looked up, and there was this object in the sky that we don't know what it was. It was a very strange looking. It looked like a building that you'd get in Dubai, but it was really high, like really far in the sky. That's how I describe it now. At the time, I wasn't thinking that. I was just thinking, what is that? And it was like an orangey, silvery color,
Hmm.
and it was just sort of floating there. And we was looking at it for like 10, 15 minutes, whatever it was. And then we just started playing football again, which is really weird because like now I would be watching that until it flies off, disappears,
Hmm.
until I got to the bottom of what it was. And I was on Paranormal Heart podcast with Kat Wald, and I was talking about my experiences, and this just popped into my head, this memory of seeing this object, whatever it was. And I told her what happened. And I said it was weird because I not really thought about it, and the memory was obviously there. But my brother listened to the show, and he rung me up a couple of days later, and he was like, "Bruv, what was that thing that we saw that day, and why have we never talked about it?" And I was
Hmm.
like, "I know, it's really weird because it was like an amazing thing. When I picture it in my mind now, it was an incredible thing to see.
Hmm.
But again, I don't know what it was. There could be a logical explanation, but it was very strange to see something in the sky like that. And it was
Yeah,
just cool that my brother remembered it as well.
yeah, and it's interesting that you guys never discussed it, before
Yeah,
then.
it's weird. Yeah, we talk about it now, but it's we just sort of. I mean, I've always been into the paranormal, but I wasn't as obsessed as I am now. Like if
Hmm.
that happened now and I saw that, I would be sitting there for days trying to work out what it
Same.
was. But yeah, so that was cool. Another UFO experience, oh, I say it's a UFO experience, was with my mother-in-law. So we both saw this as well, and this was in Brentwood, which is not too far from that church. And we was on the top floor, we was on the fourth floor, and me and my mother-in-law was just looking out, and there was like a little forested area across the road, and these three objects came out from the trees, and me and my mother-in-law were looking at it, like, what is that? Is that balloons? And they weren't massive, they were like as big as a basketball, and they were like constantly changing shape. And there was three of them, and they weren't touching, but they were sort of like moving around each other, and they seemed to be connected, but they wasn't actually touching. And they were just changing shape constantly, and they were like a silvery color. They looked like, when the Terminator melts, that sort of
Hmm.
color, like that
Yeah.
sort of look. That's how he looked. And it's just going up and up and up. And me and my mother-in-law are watching it for a good 5-10 minutes, whatever it was, and we've seen it go pretty high up, and then we just saw flash, 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 and we was like, "What is that? What was that?" Like when we're at family parties now, we're talking about that all the time. Like literally on Saturday, we was at a family event, and we're talking about it, and I can still see some family members like, "Yeah, are you sure that wasn't a balloon?" We're like, "No, it definitely wasn't. You know, it was something strange. I don't know what it was." The
Mhm.
thing that annoys me with that is I had my iPhone on me and I didn't even think to record it.
Mm.
That still bugs me.
Yeah. That's cool though that not just, your family growing up in a haunted house, of course, but also your in-laws are really supportive of it. I feel like that makes it more fun to share the experiences, talk about it, etc.
Yeah, for sure. And it's cool when you
Yeah.
have an experience with someone
Hmm.
because you know you're not going crazy. You both seen that, and so
Yeah.
that's cool. That's cool as well.
Yeah, you can back each other up at the family
Yeah,
parties and say,
that's
no,
it.
it was not a silver balloon.
Yeah, you can
Yeah.
Yeah.
think what you want, guys. We know what we saw. We don't know what it was, but it
Yeah.
was weird. And I
Yeah.
put it in the UFO bracket.
Yeah.
Is that I definitely wouldn't say that was a balloon just because of how you described how it traveled. This is like to get into a little technical term, there is drift, right? That occurs with the balloon due to like small variations of wind. So if it was just doing this or like, like lazily, but
Yeah,
if they were pretty much in formation going
yeah,
up, that's a little
yeah.
bit that's not normal balloon behavior.
No, not at all. And they were constantly changing, which was really strange. Constantly changing shape, and they seemed to be connected, but they weren't actually touching, which was really weird as well. And then to see the way they shot off was really cool.
Yeah, because if it was like a balloon, it just popped. You wouldn't have seen it
Yeah,
move away, like
yeah,
shoot away from each other.
yeah.
Yeah. That's really cool. Yeah. And I love that you guys talk about it at family parties.
Always, always. We always bring that up.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on, Tommy, and introducing us to our first UK haunt, Greensted
Awesome.
Church. If we ever get over there, we're going to have to add it to our list for the history alone. It's
100%. Yeah,
incredible.
for
But
sure.
to all of our listeners, go check out Let's Get Freaky. There's a new interview every week covering a very broad spread of paranormal stuff, cryptids, UFOs, ghosts. I think we talked about vampires even at one point when I
Everything.
was
Yeah.
talking about everything you could possibly want to learn. You can be an expert just like Tommy if you go listen. So definitely find him and follow him on Instagram. And thank you so much, Tommy, for coming on.
Thank you
Yeah,
so
thank
much, guys.
you.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.